Hey y'all. Mm, mm, mm. Today M is for Mark. Oh, Mark is like my favorite gospel. Mark represents Jesus as the ox, the servant. Remember how I told you the four gospels show like the four different faces of Jesus? Well, Mark's gospel is all about Jesus did this and then he went there and then he did this. I mean, it's do. He shows him as a servant of the people. And it is the smallest gospel, but it's got the most documented miracles in it. And that kind of makes sense because the gospel, according to Mark, is all about Peter's adventures with Jesus. So Mark documents Peter's relationship with Jesus and what Peter went through with Jesus and the miracles that Peter experienced through Jesus. So love Mark, just love him. So we know that Mark has a wealthy mother whose house was used for prayer. So people would go to her house to do prayer groups and that type of thing. Her name is Mary, not that Mary. And it was Mark's mother's house when the angel released Peter from his chains in prison. Peter went to Mary's house, Mark's mother's house. And anyway, just a little tidbit for you. So also, there's some disagreement. Did Mark really write the gospel according to Mark? Not only that, is Mark the same person mentioned in Acts, there as identified as the man John, also known as Mark? So Mark is also called John Mark. The Bible says the man known as John, who is also called Mark. Very confusing. But scholars think that John Mark and Mark, the author of the Gospel of Mark, are the same people. So Mark is mentored by Peter. And like I said, he documents all the miracles that Peter experienced with Jesus. Now, Mark is the cousin to Barnabas. Barnabas is the guy that convinced the Jews that Paul was the real Paul, that he was a Christian now. Because if you remember, Paul used to be Saul and he would persecute the Christians and kill them. And then when he had his blindness incident with Jesus and became Christian, Jesus used Barnabas to convince the fellow Jews that Paul was really a Christian now. And so Barnabas was a travel companion to Paul. Now, Barnabas is the cousin to Mark. Why is that important? Because on the first missionary trip, Mark goes with him, kind of like an assistant, a helper. So he must be a younger man. And they get to a town and Paul is preaching. And then the Bible just says Mark returned back to Jerusalem. So Mark did not go on to the next place with Barnabas and Paul. And the Bible's it's just one sentence. Mark went back to Jerusalem. But later on, we find out that this caused a huge rift between Barnabas and Paul. And that was never reconciled. And in fact, in one point, Barnabas asked Paul for another trip. Oh, why don't we ask Mark to go with us? And Paul says, no, I don't. He's not of any use to me. So there was a rift between Paul and Barnabas that never got reconciled. But it's odd because later on in years, Paul asked for Mark. He would be a good servant for me. He would be a good use to me. And isn't it odd that Mark writes the point of view of Jesus as the servant, a great, great servant? And then in the end, Paul says he would be a great servant for me, meaning he would be a good use for me. So Mark reconciles with Paul at the end. So, it just demonstrates that people are people. We all have issues, and God can use every single one of us. So, M is for Mark, companion and mentored by Peter, preserver of history. Have a wonderful, wonderful day, and blessings to you.